in Belgium for several years. You studied there and worked there for 8-9 years. You have a son, Danny. Yeah.
He's still my son.
Yes, of course. You have. I said
He
you have
wrote
a son
me
from
out
there.
to my birthday. We are going to visit him.
Yeah, and he lives there. Where in
He's
Belgium?
in Brussels. Yes,
Brussels.
he lives in Brussels.
Brussels.
Yeah.
So he is more or less in my age, even much younger.
No, he is much younger. He's 48. 48.
48.
Yes. Or 49 he will be.
Okay, so and you separated from your wife more or less in 67.
In the meantime, I could have had sons like you already. But this I'm not going to speak now because it is a different story.
I was born in 49.
Yes, and exactly in 49, Blažena, which my great love story.
Right, you told me about her.
She had a
abortion.
That's right.
Okay.
So maybe there would be 2 sons already in your age, 1962, 3.
Anyway.
But this doesn't belong to it, I think. You know.
Okay.
Je to otvorené teda? Oh.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
No.
So life is only one truth.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No. Listen, there. You know, in our age, we have not too much, no reason to cover.
Yes.
Because everything we have covered everything. But okay. So at 60, if I understand more or less, you will after the middle of 67, after the 6-day war, you left to Canada.
That's right.
And you were in Montreal for a few months,
yeah.
And then you went to Toronto for this Jewish organization.
Of this Farband.
Yes, and then after
you know what is Farband?
Farband, bond.
No. Farband means to bind together.
To bind, yes, band.
Yes, band. Cane.
Band, I know. That's band. It's in Hebrew even. Band. We use it.
Did not know.
Okay, whatever. You worked there for this organization with very low wages, and you went to the university after a few months. Let's say it was sometime in the spring 68.
At the beginning of it was terribly
cold. During
the
Dubček time, you were where?
During the Dubček time, I was already in Canada, in Prince Edward Island, because this.
What's that, Prince?
You know, we didn't come to it yet.
Yes. Oh, I see. Okay.
I came around 1966-7 to Canada. Okay.
If you raised money for Israel before the 6-day war, which was 67.
So it must have been at the end of 67 and beginning of 68.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
And during the winter you stayed in Toronto?
So I came to Canada, to Montreal, and there was a Jewish organization which was called Hayas. Hayas is like Alliance Israelite, yes. Of Rothschild, which was founded in 1860, I think, 1870, helping Jews who are immigrants or
refugees.
Yes, people. And there I met a Jewish lady from Uzhhorod, and she was very nice to me. She was an older lady, and I was staying with her, and she prepared Shabbat, and I got to know a lot of people in Montreal. And at that time I was a relatively young man, I was 35.
Yeah.
And then I decided, I found this job. I was looking for a woman, as a matter of fact, a Jewish woman. So I remember it was so cold, my ears were frozen in Montreal, I didn't realize, and it was a very difficult life. I got a certain help from the Canadian government, but I was not yet Canadian citizen. But then when I heard that in Toronto and I met this Dr. Foyer, Professor Foyer, she said, what a shame. You, Dr. Fried, you have such a good credentials. You have now from Brussels and from Vienna and from Prague, because I finished my BA in Prague. Not my BA, I finished my MA. I was classified after the pedagogic faculty of the Charles University. I was, as a matter of fact, I had to teach mathematics and physics in a Vyšší průmyslovka in Slovakia. But this would be a long story.
No, you spoke about this.
About this I spoke. But now, this is an interesting part in my life, I would say. And she said, don't worry, I will find a job for you. And at that time, the universities were still blossoming. They had a lot of money, the teachers could travel wherever they wanted. And I came to my apartment in Toronto as a man who worked with the Verband. And they gave me dishes, they gave me all tables, and my phone had, because they arranged it, I have a phone, there were about chapters, you know, about 20 chapters in this organization, in this Verband. And they called me all the time, you know, that you have to this and interviews and so. And my telephone was in a box, of paper box, kind of, and I didn't have any, you know, there was an elevator which they was called Yalev Yavo, because there were religious Jews and they didn't want on Shabbat to go. So Toronto, it was in the, I lived in a street which was called Avenue de Pays, Avenue de Pays. And it was called Bathurst Street. It's a very famous place in Toronto. Toronto is, of course, 4 million inhabitants, a big city. And I came home, and I was very enthusiastic that I spoke to this lady. But I had always a complex, and my complex was the language. This was all this, went with me everywhere, because of course, when I made medicine in Prague, so I spoke Czech. When I made the Charles University later, I spoke Czech, of course, was no problem. But when I came to Canada, so my English was problematic. My French was already very good, because I finished already in Brussels, the university. And I came home and with optimism. And when I spoke to Professor Feuer, I have still this letter here from her, 2 letters, which is very interesting, and I spoke better English, because when psychologically it is an important phenomenon. If you speak directly to a person, so you are not so afraid like if you get a phone call. In a phone call, I was always lost, and about 3-4 days I was in a kind of no man's land. I didn't know what to expect. Maybe she will call me, maybe not. Once in the evening I got a call. Professor Feuer. Dr. Fried, I have a job for you. I said, okay, a job? Where? In Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. I said, Prince Edward Island, never heard in my life. It is the smallest island, it's the smallest state in Canada, although very important, because when Canada was founded in year 1868, so Charlottetown was the place of the Confederation. It was a very important city historically. And I said, I don't know, don't worry, in a few minutes you will get a call. I said, who will be calling me? You know, I said, Professor Silverman. His name is Saul Silverman. So,
a Jew.
So I immediately knew she was Jewish, this professor. And seriously, I got a call in 1 hour time. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. And it was March, April, something like that already. April, it was May. So it was evening still, and I said, Dr. Fried, we need you very urgently. I said, okay, I need me very urgently. Okay, so where is it? Charlottetown, you know. I started to ask people what is Charlottetown. So I know that there is a specialty of lobsters, you know, they're coming from all over the world. I start to dream about lobsters, and I didn't think, you know. So, but, and he said, you know, we have a problem, because at our university, at Prince of Wales College, because Charlottetown was a typical English island, yes, Canadian, and we have a split between 2 faculties groups. One, forgotten his name, who was the head of the history department, and he left for another university. And this was in 1968. Now I 100% know. This was in March, April. And what did I do? And he said, we need you urgently because we don't have a chairman for the department for August, September, when the university is starting. I said, of course, I would be very happy. You know, I don't know what to say. But the second problem started because how do I get rid of the Verband? You know, they already felt when I went away in the afternoon and I started to tell them, listen, I have to take a leave of absence for a week. They already knew, you know, that something is in the offing which is not kosher. So what happened? They agreed. And I remember the head of the Verband was a very nice man. They gave me, and I still remember his name, but I can't know it exactly, and his wife, they invited me all fully. And Saul Silverman was insisting, you have to take a plane. But how do you get 3,000 miles? You know, this is Toronto and Charlottetown is 3,000 miles. It is like Charlottetown and Vancouver, you know, it's terrible. You have to take, and you have once in New Brunswick to change the plane, in the capital of New Brunswick, and then in Moncton, which was already also New Brunswick, a very important historical city, and then you will come to Charlottetown. First day I was frightened, you know, with the plane in Toronto, and to change so many, you know, twice. At that time the planes, you know, I didn't fly so much. I took the boat, you know, to France, when I left from Cherbourg to America, to Canada. And in my apartment I ordered a taxi in the morning, and taxi, I remember like now, was 1968, and he brought me to the airport in Toronto. And I took the plane for Charlottetown. So I changed all these things, and I came the next, after 6 hours or hours, I came to Charlottetown. And of course, Saul Silverman was waiting at the tarmac, at the airport. And of course I saw he was a Jew from Winnipeg, which is in Canada, a very cold place, in winter, minus 40 and so on. And his father was a great...
By the way, Winnipeg, there are many Jews, you know that?
Of course.
Because that was the last station of the train. When the Jewish immigration came to Canada in the 19th century, end of 19th century, that was the last stop of the train, and all the Jews
stayed in
Winnipeg. Yes. That was the last stop.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But Halifax was also a last train, a last boat, because Halifax was an important harbor, and many Jews stayed in this. I did not know about Winnipeg. That's interesting. And now I came, and I said, Jewish, no? I saw immediately, and he was very friendly. He had a kosher house. I came to Charlottetown, you know. It is an island. It's a no man's land, you know. Beautiful place, and tourists came from Los Angeles, cars you saw, you know. America is still.
It's in the west.
In the east, it is absolutely the long river from Montreal to the sea. It is the northest state in Canada. It is north from Nova Scotia, which the capital is Halifax, where I also will tell you then a story which is very interesting, I think. And what happened now? I came, and he waited me and brought me home. The first question which I was, is there a Jewish community in Charlottetown? He said no, but there is a man who is Dr. Israel Rachmel. He came from Latvia, from Riga, and he was about 8 years older than me. He ran away during the Hitler period, and he finished his doctorate in France and then came to Charlottetown. And this was a big friendship. later with this. He had a mezuzah on the door. He was not religious, but he had the Shas also, Shisha Sidurim, the Talmud, and he was always furious when, and he was a famous doctor in Charlotte.
Furious of what?
He was furious when people came, Christian institutions, let's say those who are standing here at the metros, you know, these
evangelists and all these.
Yes, Baptists. He threw them out and said, "I'm Jewish." You know, he was very, and he had a non-Jewish wife, but this was to me salvation, because I had a Jewish house. I was always invited, so almost that I neglected my lectures, because Charlottetown was a city of about 40,000 inhabitants, but the people were so friendly. You had English, you had Scottish, and you had French. And now I came, a beautiful city, you know, everybody Canadian will know, of course, Charlottetown, Canada, knew Prince Edward Island. It was the state with the longest name and the smallest population, the smallest island. So what happened now? So how does the cat jump through the water? Who should I say to Farband now? He said, yes, I hope you will be successful, because I didn't have yet the job. And he sent me to the first night to the best hotel in Charlottetown, which was Hotel Charlottetown. But I had a lot of problems, because at the night there were ploshkice, you know, there were these bugs, and it was terrible. And I was looking, when I came to sleep there, where am I? My God, from Europe, from my Jewish milieu, suddenly I came to a lost small island, but still I had a lot of verve and a lot of energy, and there was the president of the Prince Edward Island was a Scotchman, and they didn't want, Saul Silverman told me, they didn't want to have Jewish faculty, and but he was the dean of the university, and this Scotchman, you know, it was in the hand of Saul Silverman. So I was staying in this hotel all the time, waiting. I said I have in 1 week, or I have to go back to Toronto. So, because it is so an interesting, fascinating story in my view. But what happened now? I was waiting. One day they invited me for eating there, Silverman. And in the meantime I got to know Dr. Israel Rachmel, his wife, beautiful house. He was a surgeon and a well-known doctor there in Canada, in Charlottetown. There was a hospital in Charlottetown, of course. There were 2 universities. There were St. Dunstan, another, and today it is a big university, and Prince of Wales. And as I'm sitting there and in a situation of expectation, of insecurity, and once called the rector of the university, Lothian was his name, Lothian, an older man, and he said, yes, Dr. Fried will have a big interview with all faculty on Sunday in a place in Charlottetown. So you can imagine. And this was exactly at the time when Dubček, when there was the socialism with human face, and the invasion, whether Russia and the Communist parties will invite Czechoslovakia or not. And it was a situation of insecurity. This was the upheaval, you know, Dubček and I came on Sunday, a big hall with about 60, 70 faculty, professors of French, professors of German, professors of geology, of all, you know, departments. Now, and they asked Professor Fried, Dr. Fried, he would like to join the faculty. And I was, of course, trembling. I had a terrible headache. and, nervous, and did not know. And Saul Silverman was sitting beside me. And they started to ask questions. So what did you do? So I said, yes, I studied medicine, and then I studied history and languages, and I had to be a MA in Prague, and a certificate of teaching. I could teach in gymnasiums, mathematics and physics, and so they started to ask, oh, what is Czechoslovakia? What do you think? Will the Russian invade? I said, no, I don't think that they will invade. It was a false, but they didn't take it, I was optimist, and they tortured me about for 3 hours. It was 5 o'clock in the evening, it started at 2 o'clock, and I thought I failed.
What they asked you about?
I thought I failed. They asked me about what did I study, what do I know about that and about that. And I always answered, but terribly tense. But I didn't show off. I didn't show that I'm tense. So what happened now, I asked Saul Silverman, who was sitting beside me. I knew him already for 4 or 5 days. So we were already a little bit close, and he's Jewish, And I asked him, so do you think that's the end of my hopeful job? He said, no, you were excellent. I said, I couldn't believe it. So we have to wait now the decision of the faculty, of their committees, and so. And so about 3 days later, I was in the garden of Saul Silverman. And she had kosher food. She got the food from Montreal, kosher. They were religious Jews. Today he lives, his wife died, she had cancer in the meantime. And he lives in the same place where my brother, in Kanata, today. And there's also so many, analogies which are frightening. And I spoke to him later then. And suddenly he got a phone call. Professor Lothian, he was a geologist, he called. We admitted Dr. Fried for his job. They are asking what kind of salary would you like to have. So I said, I would like to have this, at least this 700 euros. He said, are you crazy? You are crazy. You will be the chairman of the history department. And so I said, okay, if you think that I would merit, I was like Charlie Chaplin there, was waiting, And so he said, you must at least get 14,000. I said, okay, I am not opposed to it if you buy. So he said to Professor Lothian, it is confirmed, you will be the chairman of the history department. You have to be in Charlottetown in the month of September, of August, while classes are starting in the 6th or 7th of September, 1968. Now, of course, I was happy because I got already a salary now from the university, the first 2-3 months, and I got a salary from Verband. So, but in Verband I had to say what is going on, with me. So I took a plane, came back, and I said, he told me, Kirschenbaum was his name, the head. It was an organization of about 800 people. I said, Alex, I knew already, with your background and with your qualifications, you wouldn't, we felt it. And he wasn't upset, he said, yes, so what can we do? I told him, I'm sorry, but I got a job, and you must understand it, to me it is more important than to be a head of a Verband.
Yes.
And he said, yes, I understand that, and the people were of course a little bit upset, and then I had to take a plane with all my Siebenzwetschgen, with what I had, and to fly again to Charlottetown, and I came already now. But what started now? I never knew about Thomas Aquinas. I never knew about in depth about Martin Luther.
Yeah.
I never knew what is realism, what is nominalism, what are all the philosophical questions of scholasticism, what is the fall of Rome. I knew a lot about Stalin, I know about the historical and material dialectic materialism of Stalin, and I knew about Russian history, and I knew about Czechoslovakia, but I had no idea about European history. And I had to teach not languages, which would be easier, but to me it wasn't the same Rama, it wasn't the same level. I wanted to teach history and philosophy and more political science, to mix these things.
Yes.
So, as I'm a very conscientious person, but only in the last minute, you know, I'm not conscientious that I would now sit for months and prepare, but this was really a thing which was very tense in my life. It was a beautiful summer, and I see Chinese tourists came by boat and came out, and a lot of interesting things, people who were eating with great enthusiasm the lobsters, and I was visiting Charlottetown and the Israel Rakmel, and in the meantime I had already many half-Jews and quarter-Jews, friendships and so. So, but I had to find an apartment. It was May or June, and I had it was August. It must have been August because it was here, and it was September. It was nearing, and I had already, when I came back, the first time I visited this was twice I visited Charlottetown. The first time when I visited Charlottetown, so I knew that I will maybe get the job, but I already started to study European history. And this Thomas Spira, he was a professor at Newark, near New York.
Newark.
In Newark. He was very helpful. He sent me different syntheses of, let's say, the Congress of Vienna, the French Revolution, and what is Enlightenment, and Robespierre, and about, you know, the encyclopedists, Voltaire, and so on. So, and I was crazy studying all those things because I did not know anything. But when I got the job, so I was the chairman. I got a big building, I had a secretary, I had a big office, you know, and the university was well off, you know, they had excellent food there, and I get befriended with the professor of philosophy, the professor of that, and people were very, very nice, you know, Professor Fried, you know, and I got already a title, associate professor, you know, like I got later at the University of associate professor.
Associate.
This is the last step. Associate. This is the step before full professor.
Yes,
when I came to University of Yerushalayim, I also get my title Professor Haver. So what happened now? I was absolutely lost because I wasn't able, you know, I took it very seriously, but these students whom I had to teach first, a freshman group, they were 19-year-old, they did not know anything about their life. If you told them about Venice or if you told them about Florence, they thought it is somewhere near Washington. Because you have many names in America also, which are Florence.
Yes.
You have Florence, you have Venice, you have Halifax, you know. And I took it so seriously, and I was torturing myself. I was studying 10 hours a day, and I was copying. You know, when I had to speak about the fall of the Roman Empire, you know, Gibbon was one of the famous historians and many other, you know, and I had problems in European history. I had these different papers, and I was cheating because I did not know about it, and I had to write down my lectures because I don't like to read in my lecture. I like to be free, you know, to speak. But what do I know? What happened with, let's say, the period of in England of the development of baptism or of religious religious institutions, movement. And I was very lost, and I thought, my God, they will not respect me, and I will not be successful. And I was very pessimistic because I really did not know all these things. And when I became the chairman, so I had about 8 people in my department. And one was Reg Stewart. He came from Vancouver. He was a young boy. He had only the MA at that time. No one could get the chairmanship of a university without having a doctorate.
I see.
And I was the one who had a doctorate. So when I left Charlottetown, and when I got a lot of applications, I could never nominate a chairman or a professor of history later already without a doctorate. This was sine qua non. Sine qua non. This was a must. Now what happened? So I wrote down the lectures, and I had it prepared. To my freshman class, on the 7th of September, I had about 67 or 8 students. One was from Lebanon, and I spoke about Israel all the time, about Judaism. And he was a fanatic, you know, a Muslim. His father was a Muslim, mother was a German. And there were different types of people. And I came, it was to me like if I would be tried to be hanged, you know. It was like torture. I was looking at the place already 3 days where I will be lecturing. Terrible, you know. And I came, I said, please, I'm happy to be here, but I hope you will be caring with me a little bit. I never taught at an English university, and it might happen that my English will be a little bit. No, don't worry, don't worry. In Canada at that time there were many foreigners, you know, and there were many Indian, and there were many from Arab countries and so. So and I looked, but I also looked at the people, so that I a little bit, and then after 5-7 days I came to Reg Stewart, and I told him, Reg, I'm so upset, you know. He was my adjutant, you know, he was my Schlatten Shames, we said, you know. And I said, you know what I'm doing? I'm writing 3 different ideas about the fall of Rome, about the scientific revolution of the Renaissance, about that and that. And he said, what do you think, Dr. Fried, you know, Professor Fried? He was very kind of, I'm doing the same thing. He's a Canadian, you know. He's doing the same thing. So, and then I got a very good, you know, I was very thorough, and I prepared these lectures, but these students were absolutely, the batteries were flat. They did not know anything. You could have told them a mother, a child in their bow, they would not know, you know, in their tummies. But then it was another course which I had, and this was a course already more mature students, and this was a course from the fall of the Roman Empire to the French Revolution for freshmen, from beginners, and then I had a course from the fall of Byzantium in 1453 to the Turks, to the French Revolution, and there I had a smaller class, already 25 students, and a third class which was a seminary about Russian history, about Russian nationalism, about Pan-Slavism, because I wrote in Brussels this Derzhavin about Russia, so I knew a little bit of Russian history, and there I had only 12 or 14 students, and it was a torture. It was very difficult, and then administration also. I was the chairman in the Senate, and then terrible. And so after 3 years, you know, when I finished my lectures, I went to the sea. I had a nice apartment, and I had the records and music and so, and I had a stretch of the sea about 5 kilometers, which no one came, only me, because there was the sea in Charlottetown, and the other side it was already
Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. And I was always dreaming when I will be leaving Charlottetown and Canada, because there were no Jewish people, only this. And I told it to we call him Iz Rachmer. You know, in Canada you say Alex or so. And he was very upset. He said, "Why are you leaving? You have a plane here, you can go every day to Halifax, to Montreal, you can go to London." There was a plane from through Montreal to London. And I said, "You know, I can't stay here because I would like to marry, I would like to find a Jewish woman, and I don't have it here." And he said, "Don't be crazy, you are the chairman of the department and you have a very good future here." He said, one day I wrote a letter to the University of Nova Scotia in Halifax. It's already a big city. I'm a big city man. I don't like small places and villages. In Halifax is about 300,000-400,000 inhabitants, one of the greatest harbors of Zim, for instance, you see, of containers. One of the one of the greatest harbors of containers in the world. So what did I do? I wrote a letter and I got an answer. Because you have always, after I ended my 3 years, you have these openings, you know, and you get a lot of papers in the history department or physics or wherever, where are openings at university, openings where they are looking for. Yes. So, and I wrote, I said, yes, I am the chairman of the history department in Prince of Wales College, and now they changed the University of Prince Edward Island. And I got an answer after 1 week. Professor Fried, we need you urgently, you know. You know, the head of the department, in history department, we were very good friends. He married a German woman. He was a Welshman and an Irishman and a mixture, but he was an alcoholic. He fell asleep during lectures. And the university in Canada, in Halifax, there were 4 universities. One was, of course, Dalhousie University, a famous university, and another St. Mary's University, and there was the University of a very Catholic university. I've forgotten the name, I will immediately come. They were also dressed in Catholic dresses, you know, and I, a Jew, you know, became, and the first time they took me without any interviews. I sent them my credentials, what I am, you know, in Prague, MA, Vienna doctorate, in Brussels, second doctorate, deuxième licence, and Charlottetown. So it was already, you know, when I was admitted, so in the new professors was written Professor Dr. Alexander Fried, Prague, Vienna, Brussels. So it made an enormous impression, you know. And so I'm upset that I can't remember the name of the university, you know, it very rarely happens to me. A Catholic university after a saint, a French saint, which was very conservative, orthodox, very Catholic. And I, Alexander Fried, became the chairman of the history department. I got letters from the Jewish community, congratulations that a Jew can become a chairman and in a Catholic university. And I became immediately a member. Yeah, what I have forgotten to tell you, when I was in Charlottetown, no. So there came the holidays. I did not know where to go to Yom Kippur. I always went to Halifax. And there was a friend who came from Israel, Nathan Nevo, and his brother was a doctor, a medical doctor, Dr. Jakubowicz. He didn't change his name, and we became very close friends. And so when I stayed in Halifax, there were two synagogues, the conservative and the liberal synagogue, and so it was not Charlottetown anymore. Charlottetown was a cozy, small place, a lot of warmth, friendship, and there, instead of Rachmel, Dr. Rachmel, and his wife Dorothy and their son David, who was adopted, a non-Jewish boy, and they lived in Israel then later. And the tragedy was when he died later. He was a chain smoker, Dr. Rachmel. There is no Jewish cemetery. He was buried in a Christian cemetery about 10 kilometers out of Charlottetown. And Marina, my previous friend, we went and I said Kaddish at his grave, because he was on the wall there, and this Christian. We had many friends and he was very popular, but you know, I can't remember everything, but these are all interesting and important things, I think, matters. And when I came to Halifax, so I had these Nevos and this Jakubowicz and other friends. There were already a bigger Jewish community, and the university was much more strict, you know, and there were already evaluations in the faculty. Every 3 months, the students got a paper with about 40-50 questions.
Yes.
They looked in the kishkes of you, you know, yes. Whether you are a good teacher, whether you are this and this, whether you can explain,
yes.
and how is your English, and all these things. So I was successful. It was very difficult, and in the meantime, which I didn't tell you, the most important thing was when I was in Halifax in 1974, I got a sabbatical, which you call, free year, and I came to London and I met the mother of Jonathan. And she was from Žilina. She was 21 years younger than me. And she lives now in Prague. And with her I had an enormous disappointment. But what I have with her is a very marvelous son, which I have, this Jonathan, today. And she worked at the BBC, at the Slovak department, and I went every day to BBC, and then when I came to London, so I found her, and she was very happy. She cried, you know, she wanted to find a new life. She had a terrible life before. She was married with a Greek man, and the Greek man had beaten her. She was a very good-looking woman, you know, but very unstable and very problematic. I'm not saying, yes, purely Jewish, but she didn't know anything about her Judaism.
She was my generation.
Yes, she is older. She's 67. She was born
47.
Pardon?
Where?
No, she was born 1944.
During the war.
During the war, 1944, and she was also hidden. And you know, but it is a little bit, I don't know how you will publish these things, because this is a little bit, I said at the beginning, I don't want to go into my privacy, into my...
Why not?
You know... Okay.
Maybe your children want to know it.
You are right, you are right.
What do you care? Why do you care? Let's say it will be the other Shem, and somebody will... Somebody will... you publish few books and you like...
No, it is already a good thing, because I have already a German writer. They are studying your... Your interviews, yes.
So I want to meet this woman.
No, of course, they are marvelous people, you know. They are 2 doctors, medical doctors. And what happens now, I would like to finish this small, you know, it makes me a little bit headache always when I have to think back. Although I had son and and Strunce Abraki. You know, the life was not always happy, but it was very often very happy because I liked Prince Edward. But there I was very sad because Danny, my son, I left him in Brussels, and I was looking at the sea, and I saw all the time. He was 5 years old, a small boy. You know, there are many analogies, maybe often in your life or in many lives, you know, but it is a typical case of a person.
May I ask you,
yeah.
so when you left Brussels, you were in contact with your son?
Of course, I sent him when I came to Canada, and when I came to Canada, I sent him from the Royal Bank of Canada every month payment from my salary. I wrote him letters, but the mother was very difficult. She didn't want that I should speak to him. She was afraid, different problems. And she wrote a letter because I had an apartment which I bought in Vienna, and she thought that the apartment belongs to her. Problems, you know, there were a lot of problems. But you are maybe the first person whom I'm opening myself so fully, and to Dorothea now, she knows also about that. But not so in depth like you now. You provoked me a little bit, you know, with your speaking. But what I wanted to say now, and this mother of Jonathan, Susanna, her name is Susanna Hoffman, was her name. It is a family from Piešťany, but her mother lived in Žilina. It is a really Slovak Jewish family, and I was happy. I thought, now I found a Jewish woman who is good looking. But after the marriage, already telephone came from this and this, you know, the old friends. And my cousin was a rabbi in London, my first cousin, Dr. Ehrman. And he was the rabbi at the wedding which we had in a big, he was in London, and she went to a mikveh, and it was a tragedy because she did not know to read Hebrew. She was absolutely away from.
It's my generation.
Yes.
We didn't have the chance.
No, she didn't.
Dunajska Streda, I went to Cheder, but
but you know much more. You knew than she. She didn't know. The mother, she went to synagogue already Slovak or German. She read, you know. So to make a long story short, because I wouldn't like really to go into depth. It was a very enormous disappointment which I had with the mother. She was 21 years younger, and she fell in love with a young man who was a Don Giovanni, who was a Jewish man from Russia, and I met his wife, and she told me, what can you do? I know he's like that, and we already had beaten one servant. It was terrible. Therefore I don't like to go to London. And but my son is a marvelous boy, and she is now contacting me already.
How old is he?
She is Jonathan is 35.
35.
He was now in February, in March he was 35. Now and then she wanted to leave Halifax. She made her MA in Spanish. A very intelligent woman. Very intelligent.
The wife, your wife.
Yes. And then
so she went with you to Halifax?
She went with me to Halifax, and on the way already, when we came to Halifax, Jonathan was born in Halifax. And I did not know about her previous life, but I already saw that she was very imbalanced, you know. You never knew she spoke like that sometimes, and you can't rely. And if I will show the letter, Šaňuško môj drahý, ty si ma zachránil, ty si môj život, ty si moje všetko, you know. And all these things, and ja chcem začať nový život, she smoked, she had grey hairs, but she colored herself in red hair, and so. Oh, it was a terrible tragedy, and we came to London. I bought a house. I had already a little bit money because I was teaching, you know, at the universities.
And still you continue to be teacher in Halifax?
No. When there in Halifax I was 8 years at the Mount St. Vincent. Mount is like Har HaKodesh. Saint Vincent was the famous Vincent, a saint in France in the 16th century. And one day she came and she said, ja už nechcem tu byť. I don't want to stay in Halifax.
So you were in Halifax?
She worked at the BBC, and because of that she left the BBC, and like here is the Europe.
Yeah, Free Europe.
Free Europe. She worked, I don't know, in these two institutions, and she wanted to come back, but she had already some kind of with this boy, I think so, because she wanted to come back, and this Nevo, this Nathan in Halifax, they were so friendly. He took us in the night to the airport, and I was already very upset because I felt something is there not in order. Of course, it was not a healthy relationship. 21 years older, you know, although it can happen, such a thing. And we had a happy marriage. We were, you know, I was not. Let's say a invalid, or we had a nice life, but she fell in love with this Russian, and it was a trauma to me. It was a terrible trauma. She got the house, she got the son, whom she left, and had problems. Now and then.
I don't understand. So you were in Halifax for 8 years.
From 1971. I came to Charlottetown 1968, and I stayed 3 years in Charlottetown, and then I was 8 years in Mount St. Vincent in Halifax. And in 1978 I left for London with Susanna.
And with Jonathan, who was already how old he was?
Jonathan was at that time 5 years old, 5, 6 years old, and. What happened now, then I did not know what I started. Yes, in London I started, also I wanted to teach, but I had this terrible period with Susanna, and in spite of that I was teaching at Hasmonean Grammar School for Boys, which is a very distinguished London Jewish gymnasium, and I taught the last class before the university, and it was a religious Jewish school. I came without a head cap, and the rabbi, and it was a famous school in London, and he said yes, but I said, you see, I'm not so religious, and I'm not feeling like there, and this was very, not fanatic Jewish, but not women.
Yeah.
Now what happened now? He said, we will see how the Shidduch will work, he said. If I should show you the letter, you wouldn't believe it. Praise from faculty, from all, you know. I have letters, they said, Professor Fried, when you speak to him, every word, he finds an interpretation of that in English, in German, in Hebrew. And from the director, it was a very happy Shidduch. Although one student saw me without a hat in a park, and he said it. And then he said, you should respect Professor Fried, he is a survivor of the Holocaust. And this was in these terrible days. I had to be at 8 o'clock in the morning with the metro in an apartment. And it was a life hell, you know. And I stayed there for 3 years until 1983 or something like that. And in 68, yes, yes. So in the meantime, I don't know what I was doing, but then finally I came to Prague and I became again a lecturer at the Charles University. But now I don't remember.
But you came back before Victor 79?
No, I before 89, you want to say?
89, sorry.
No, I came immediately after 89, yes. And then I met.
But you stayed in London probably till 81, right?
Yes, I stayed in London, and no, I stayed in Halifax. And then in London, yes, I stayed until I think 81 or 82, but then Susanna moved to Munich, and Jonathan went also to Munich, and I was then teaching at the Munich International. This was also a school in Munich, and I came
English
in
school.
English school, yes, and there was also credentials, very successful, French, German, and history. I was teaching there, and I took every day the daughter of Susanna, whom I wanted to adopt stupidly, and I always gave her my account and everything. I was so happy, you know, in the beginning. And then
she had a daughter from previous.
She had it from the Greek.
From the
Yes, and she promised that 100% she will not marry out. She will remain Jewish because she knew Torah and sin. And I thought
the daughter.
Yes, a very pretty woman, and Jonathan also, and the two women. Banim gidalti veromamti vehem pashubi or pishubi. This is the word in Yeshayahu. Jonathan, whom I love so much, as you know, he married now. He's a friend with a Russian girl, and she will convert to Judaism. She's already studying. In March she will get that she's admitted in the liberal synagogue. And of course I'm not happy about that, because Jonathan is the first generation of survivor, of Holocaust survivor. I'm the survivor and he's the first generation.
Yes.
And I pulled him out, like here you see the picture, God, when he took this Jew who is standing, you see, put him. This is a picture from Nathan. Nathan is a well-known, relatively good-known painter, and I have a lot of paintings of him. And he, maybe you would like to buy one. I have here a very nice one, and he would be happy. He wants only $300 Canadian dollars, but this is a very interesting painting. But I'm not going now to speak about it. So what happened now, this Susanna didn't care about. She was in love with this man and neglected this Jonathan, and I came and I helped him and I saved him. And he went to a middle class school, absolutely low middle class, and I pulled him out and I brought him to Carmel College, to a Jewish college. And he finished there.
Where it was?
Near to London.
This
was one of the best colleges, Jewish colleges in London and in England. And I've forgotten to tell you, when I was at Hasmonean School of Hasmonean School for Boys, they got a decree from London. They were the best school, mathematics and physics, in the whole area of London. And they came a lot of faculty from different cities, from Manchester, religious people with beard, and non-Jewish people. And I had a great success in spite of the terrible situation in which I found myself. I had to pray, of course, in the evening, mincha, and you know. And now my student whom I taught German, and is now the chief rabbi in South Africa and chief rabbi in Hampstead, and so. So just to tell you. Now,
one moment, I didn't get you.
Yeah, I know.
After you were, I'm a bit lost. You went about 80, if I understand, 81, 82, went to London. Your son probably was that time already 5, 6.
No, 81, but this was my sabbatical. This was already. I came, no, this was 83, 84, 83, 84, I got a sabbatical. And there I got to know Susanna. This was in 83, 83.
Yes.
Yes, and we married, and Jonathan was born in 1980. No, Jonathan was born
before. If he's 35, so he had to be born.
1960.
75.
1976.
1976. Yeah. So 76. So yeah. If I understand you, because I try according to what you are saying, is you went to Halifax sometimes 72-3. After a few years, you went to London. After 3 years.
To Halifax I came 71. I was 68 in Charlottetown, 3 years in Charlottetown.
Yes.
71 in, and 76, and
73.
and 78, I ended Halifax.
I
78.
see. But in meantime, you were in London in
Yeah,
74.
yes. I had a sabbatical in
And
70. It must have been in 73 because
Three.
Jonathan was born. No, in 74. One sec. I'm mixing with Danny, you know. So it was 74,
And
and,
he was
I
born-
met Susanna,
Yes.
and I was the happiest person in the world. A beautiful woman, you know, and everything, and but beautiful woman, but unstable, you know. The problem. And now what happened?
So you at 78 you left and to London. You stayed in London a few years, right? And you went to Munich when? At 81.
In Munich, I went to yes, I stayed in what did I do in 1978?
You left to England.
Left to England. Yes, 1978. And 1978, I stayed in about a house, and I was already with Susanna. And then she went in the 90s. She had to move to Munich, and there, by the way, you know him, Fischstein, who is today here. He was also working at the Radio Free Europe. You never heard about Fischstein?
I know.
He's also divorced about 2-3 times. He had children there, and we lived at the same kind of.
I know of several people from Free Europe.
Yes.
Because in Prague, then they moved to
Yes,
Prague.
and we are very good friends. He invited me very often. I didn't go to. Now it is near the Hagibor,
Yes.
the building. So, and so this period from 1980 to 1990, I don't know what I did really. Now, I can't remember. No, I was in London, and I was teaching at different schools.
And you were taking care of your son, you know.
I was taking
Not,
care
and he
of-
was not with his mother. He was with you.
No, he was no. The legal system decided that he should stay a small child with the mother.
Yes.
And I gave the most money of the house. It costed about.
But you
14.
took him to school in London.
Yes, yes. He was a small boy, and he was then when he started, when he was 10 years. No, in London he made also his bar mitzvah. So it was 13 years after. He was born 1976, 1986, and 1989. I was teaching 1989 Hasmonean, and I was at the bar mitzvah. We lived in Muswell Hill. This is a part of London. And then this was already 1990, 1991, and they moved to Munich. And I already, 1 second, but I came to Israel as an Ole in 1983, 1984. I don't know, now I'm mixed up, you know. Because I came to Israel in 1984 as a Ole Chadash. So it must have been the Hasmonean Grammar School from 79 to 83 or 84. And then I came to Israel, and I stayed in Israel, and I taught first at different schools, and I couldn't teach because the boys and the children were very very difficult, and I couldn't stand it. And then I came to the University of Yerushalayim, you know, and I presented myself, and I said I have degrees in this and this, and I got a very important job at the Hebrew University with a very nice salary, and I had to write the scientific work to enlarge about Yerushalayim, you know, which was published now. And I gave lectures at the University of Yerushalayim. I spoke already Hebrew, and Jonathan remained in London, with his mother and with this boy, with this man. They lived together and everything, and therefore I was very upset about the whole thing. And in a Hebrew university I stayed for about 2 or 3 years. And I got a very nice salary and it was very, I had a parking place at the Hebrew University. And up there, you know, you could see the Yam HaMelach from up. It was very
Yeah,
nice.
Har HaTzofim.
Har HaTzofim. And now my life started in Israel. And I gave lectures in different institutions, in Yiddish and in Amchu, which is people of Holocaust survivors, and so on, so on. And I started to be happy in Israel. I had this nice job, and I got to know Rina. And with Rina I was 21 years. We were not always together, we were sometimes not together. And she had also problems with her sons and different health problems. And so, in a way, to sum it up, I am a happy person that I survived the Holocaust, because I don't know why. As I told you in Žilina, I did not know why this Marček, this commander of the concentration camp, freed me. Because Kiki, Alchani, Sprons, all these four boys, they were immediately died. So I was happy that I am still alive with my 86 years, and I had a very rich life, a very sparkling, I would say, with a lot of happiness and with a lot of sadness, because I was saved from 100% death during the Holocaust period. And also in Montreal, I didn't tell you once, I went to sleep into a hotel, in a nice, very nice hotel, and it happened many times that in the hotel caught fire at night, and one woman or another man were burned to death. And I did not know, I had earplugs in my ears, and they broke up the door and they carried me out and I was saved. Like now, about half a year ago, when I was in Germany, in a city of East Germany with Dorothea, with the new lady, so I had fallen very dangerously, my head,
Yes.
and so I was many times saved in my life. So what I wanted to say, I'm sure that we would find analogies with your life, we would find analogies with many other lives about the developments in life. But if I look back, I'm not upset and I'm not sad, because of course I'm not ideal. I have my problems, I am very spoiled, and I have a certain problem with the Holocaust, and that I can't forget it, this terrible suffering. I think very often about my mother, about Gizi, about, you know, what happened during the time. I told you that in our family lived my cousin and with the 3 children who were saved until the end, and they went to Hungary and they had been killed. So when I'm making gymnastics in the morning, yoga for instance, and then I'm always calling these names, and I'm saying Gizi, Etush, and these names, but because I can't get rid of these terrible things. Of these family problems, I have already forgotten. I'm saying, of course, that no one is perfect, and of course I made also certainly mistakes, but I am not aware really that I would do something so breaking that I would be guilty in whatever thing. So life is just sometimes a conundrum, an enigma, and no one knows what expects him. It is not a rational thing, the next hour or the next day. But if I'm looking back to my life, I can say that I lived a very serious life, and I had very serious occupations. I wrote a lot of articles and gave a lot of lectures, and I remained faithful to my upbringing, to my past. I never changed my name. I am always traditional in my Judaism, although I don't keep strictly the laws, because after these experiences in the Holocaust, and then I'm saying I'm a little bit freed from all of these obligations. But if I'm summarizing, and of course I told you maybe only a few, if we take it 100%, so maybe 70, 75, but the small details and the small finesses of life which one lived through these periods, one can't remember everything. But certainly I would define myself like Hans Kohn, the great historian who influenced me very much in the fields of nationalism, who was a friend of Franz Kafka, and whom I met in Philadelphia before he died. When I came to Charlottetown, so I wrote him a card, a letter, my secretary, that I'm so enthusiastic about his book about Pan-Slavism. He wrote about 20 books. His name was Hans Kohn. And if you would study the problems of Franz Kafka and Franz Werfel and all the Pleiades, he's very Buber, for he wrote a big book about Martin Buber. And I visited him, and he told me, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. You don't know what I went through in my life." He was before dying. He was 80. He was 79. I have still his card. And I did not know at that time, when I was in Charlottetown, that he was a friend of Kafka, that he came to Russia, that he spoke Hebrew, that he was a Zionist, that he was one of the founders of Maccabi here and in Prague, and of Magibor, and of all these institutions. When Buber gave the 3 speeches, which are very fundamental in the history of Hasidism and the history of those Jews who became crazy about the East European Jews, you know, who became sick about that, and Kafka and Max Brod and all of these things. And the same thing, you know, I came to him and he told me, "You don't know," he was a professor, he wrote a book about his life, and in there he's writing that "Ich bin ein Bürger vieler Welten." Und ich habe so vieles erlebt, dass es wäre schwer, alles zu erzählen. Und ich habe jetzt, I'm also now more involved in German history, and he said he hoped that Germany will become, is on the way to become a better country because of the awareness what they did. He was a professor at many universities. I think at the university where Einstein was in America, in United States. And after my visit of Hans Kohn, 2-3 months later he died. And the same thing was again when I came to Charlottetown. I did not know. Yeah, when I came to Halifax, it came Pesach, it came Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So what I did, there was a family of Medjak. Medjak were millionaires. And this Medjak is like you, let's say, builders, and he has in Halifax great riches, and in Halifax are very rich builders. How you call yourself also? You are a
developer.
A developer. So I did developer, and what did I do? So his cousin was a rabbi in Moncton, about 600 miles from Halifax, or 500 miles, you know, far. And I told him, Rabbi, you know, now is Yom Kippur and Pesach, and I'm here, and I don't know. No, this was in Charlottetown when I was in Charlottetown. And he said, so, Professor Fried, come, we are happy to see you. And I stayed with those in Moncton, and I met a lot of, and there were the Medjaks, because the Medjaks, they came from Moncton. Moncton is a very important historical city in New Brunswick, where there were these Acadians. This was a French tribe which was chased out of Canada in 1761.
I read about this.
To the south of
to Louisiana.
Excellent, yes. Oh my God, if you know that. So there is also the museum of the Acadians, you know, and I became involved. Yeah.
Because you know why America is not French. You know that. Because Napoleon sold it to
Of course. When I came to New Orleans, so I spoke with these Acadians French. They are still the from the children of the yes. And I came to, you know, there was the jazz in New Orleans. I was sitting like in a yeshiva, you know. I was sitting at the Preservation Hall, it is called. So I could tell you so many histories and so many scientific lecturings, but then in the end, one is a little bit upset because you feel that you don't have many years that you can become active, and but I'm very happy that I found a person who is really an ideal person, and I'm very happy.
Dorothy,
yes.
I want to ask you about your children.
You know, you made me a little bit a headache, because, you know,
are you disturbed about this, or you don't want to continue?
No, I mean...
no, I just have a few questions.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who is going to see this movie I'm making and what will come out of it. But I'm sure that your children will see it.
Yes.
So I would
you
like...
made it mainly for the children. This was your beginning, what you said.
For your children.
Yes,
no, that's what I told you. No, I didn't do it for your children, but I said that you should do it for your children.
You are right. Now it is very lobenswert, you know. This is the German word, praiseworthy. It is very praiseworthy that you are undertaking such a thing before my end of my life, you know, that I spoke to you a little bit about things, and I'm sure that this Dr. Wentz, they are called Wendt, he is a great expert on skin, and the grandfather of Dorothea was a great professor, and there was a big conference now in Dresden, and he will now get a big, not a stone, but a memorial grave place, and they are also very instrumental in doing that, and they are happy that they can write about my life. Yes.
Okay, if I summarize, actually you have two kids who grew up more or less without you, but you were influencing or somehow...
Very strongly.
Yes. And you are more or less in good relations with both of them, if I understand correctly. And they are two of them are married, and you have grandchildren?
No, Danny is not married.
He is not married, but Jonathan is married, and he probably will have a...
He's not married. Jonathan is also not married, but they live together.
They live together, and she wants to become a Jew for his sake, and so.
Yes.
Okay, and your Danny, who was grown up as a child in Belgium, in Brussels, and he never married again.
And
so you have a message to him, something that you would like to tell them?
I have a message to the two boys, of course, that it is very important to not forget two words. One word is conscientia, which means conscience, and the second word is character. Conscience is not openly a word in the Torah and in the Jewish writings. We have only the word matzpun. Matzpun is a modern word.
No, we have the word toda'ah. Toda'ah is consciousness.
Yeah, toda'ah is also conscience, but it is not purely a word for conscience. But very nicely you said, there are about 24 synonyma with conscience. And one is toda'ah. Toda'ah Yehudit, for instance, or different. But I'm not going now. I've written a big article about that.
No, but you know, I would try to put you in a little bit other line.
I will immediately finish this.
Like without not so much to lecture.
Scientific, yes, yeah, no, I know.
Something personal.
So why am I saying about these two words? So conscience is a very important. I don't know how you say in Czech or in Slovak. Means. Okay, we are not going to lecture, but these two words were always with me in my life, because I think that because we suffered so much, we have to have conscience, we have to have conscientia, we have to have the awareness of what we are, who we are, and of course I can't expect it from my sons. Although I would be happy if they would go in the derech shel ha'av shelahem, and derech shel the tradition of my family, of my grandfather who was a rabbi and who had 16 children, and me who went through the Holocaust, and that one of the factors of conscience is also faithfulness, is to be, not to forget one's upbringing, one's origin. And I say always that you gave me a nice word, Toda'ah Yehudit. Although we are not a nation without mistakes, and even the state of Israel is making a lot of mistakes, but we are a great cultural nation. And I would wish that the two boys would remain faithful, remain in the direction their father had educated them. I always spoke to them about sentences from Pirkei Avot, from Mishlei Shlomo, from Tehillim. I sang to them in the evening when they went to bed, Schluf schon, schluf mein Teil Kindele, mach schon, zieh dein Teil Äugele, schluf schon, schluf. And you don't see that. You can't expect it from them. Although Jonathan is a very good son, and Dami is also a little bit problematic. He has problems, and he is, of course, doing what he can. He disappointed me in a certain way, that he didn't go in the way which I wanted, and I'm saying it to him. But he said today is a different life. So, to make words simple, I'm happy that I had brought to the world two sons, and I'm happy that I am still alive in my 86 years, and I would be happy if I would be a good friend with them, and that we should be always in connection, and we should care for one another. And I can say that I cared for them.
Okay. תודה רבה.